YouTube? Welcome to the shop. Thomas here. Well, I got me circuit board right here. No, I've got me another LED matrix cube thingamajigger. I've already made one of these and I did a video on it, but this one's a little bit different. It is an 8x8x8, but it uses 5mm LEDs instead of the 3mm. As you can see, I already put some of those things together. This is a SainSmart. I can't remember the name of it now. Unfortunately, this one's a little bit, well, it pretty much, the circuit board pretty much came completely assembled. There's only a few parts to solder in and put the speaker in, which I didn't realize that. I thought I was going to have to, just like the other one, put the whole thing together, which is kind of a bummer. I was kind of looking forward to putting it all together. But one thing that's interesting about this one is that it actually has an MP3 player built into it. There's a little speaker that goes on here. It has an SD card, you know, so you can put music in through that way. And it also has two 3.5-inch mini, so you can this is music out, and then where's the other music in for that one. It's supposed to have a lot more features as far as the way the LEDs light up and stuff. And it came with like I said, it came with the remote control, because you can use it as a night light and breathing, and of course it'll dance to music, etc., etc., etc. And that's one of the few things that it didn't actually solder in. I got to solder in the little IR things for the remote. But just, actually I need that bag, don't I? But you will have to do the really mundane part, and that's, it comes with those little pin things, so you'll have to cut those out individually to get, because that's where the LED actually plug into that thing. So you gotta get the plastic off there, and it's pretty easy. You know, basically what you want to do, is what I was doing, to get some fine cutters. Move that out of the way. And you know, you got that little spot right in there to cut, that little groove. Well, you want to go just past it, you know, and so these need to be really fine cutters. Basically, they can't be like regular cutters where they have a wide. Actually, let me get a pair and show you. Pair I was wanting to show you, but you know, like these are going to be a wee bit too big and not fine enough. And the idea, it's like I was saying, is you want to get close to it as possible, kind of give it a little squeeze, and you can kind of see, if I get it right there, see what I'm saying? And now it'll just peel right out. And that's how you get those little pins out. And then of course you got to solder all those pins in, which is always fun. And I'll show you how I'm going to do that when I get to it. And then the other thing that's got to be done with this one is the LEDs. Well, first of all, you need to make a little jig, and this is just two pieces of cardboard that I've glued together. And for the 5mm holes, I used a 3/16 inch wood boring bit, And the reason why I use the wood boring bit is because it has a nice fine point and 2 little points on the side, and it helps cut these holes a lot better in cardboard. A regular spiral bit will work, it just doesn't work as well. I will say though, the 3/16 is just a hair smaller than 5mm, so these things go in there pretty tight. But then you want to, what I did is I just went ahead and pretty much bent them all. And you know, I took a couple days and bent them. But what you want to do, the long lead is positive. So what I did is I just bent every long lead, and all you're doing is just bending it just like that. That might be a little bit too proud there. And so it looks like that. And there's several ways I see people doing it. Some people put them in the little jig there and use a ruler or whatever, but I like these little scrolling pliers. This is for jewelry making. And you can see they're tapered. So what I like to do is I just bring it all the way up for the most part, grasp it, and I just pull it over. And now, that's it. It's got to look just like that. And that's it. So, I got one more here that I didn't do, I think. Maybe. Or maybe that was it. No, there's one more. So, just to do it again. So, it's like such and such. You're just going to pull it with your fingernail. You know, you kind of want it as and then take your the scrolling pliers and then bam. And that's it. And then when you get to that point, you can do it a couple different ways on the soldering right here. Turn my thing on. Make the smell of that solder. You could do a couple different ways. You could just basically what I would recommend, either well, do one row at a time, and then what you're going to have to do is, because of the way it is, when you stick in the second one, you got to go, the positive has to go under. Let's see. So the next row, the positive goes under, and then like that. So these two have to touch because they're the negatives, and these are all the positives. So basically what you want to do is, like I said, I do one row at a time, the negatives. And you kind of want to, I know this isn't quite that easy, but you can kind of see that one's sticking up, so you want to you know, kind of slightly bend it or hold it when you're soldering it. I always do the ones that are already kind of touching and are already, like these couple right here are perfect already. So, and then that one's good, and these two right here have to be bent a little bit. So I'll just go ahead and do the ones that are already basically ready to go. Sorry for the noise, but this is my fume extractor. So, you know, put a little bit on there. And that one's kind of, some of these you might have to hold just like that till it cools the solder, because you don't want them stick them up too much. so I'll just sit there and let that cool. And then like this one right here is got to bend quite a bit, that one. Alright, so we got one row completely finished. But now we need to test that thing to make sure that we don't have any LEDs that are no good, either because, you know, one reason or another they may not be any good. It could be, you know, bad from the manufacturer, or we could have messed up and sat there too long with the soldering iron and burned one up. So all I've got is a little battery pack, two AA batteries, and I put some jumpers on it, and we take the ground and we just touch, I think you can see that, we just touch the negative, the one, you don't have to move it, just touch one of them, and as you can see, that one's good, that one's good, that one's good, 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 and good. So that row is good. So now we can go ahead and go on to the next row, the next row, the next row, and each row we test it. And then when we get to, you know, get them all the negatives soldered, and then we can go on and do the positives. And same thing there. Some of these may need to be bent because they're sticking up or whatever, or whatever the case may be. But then you do you know, exact same thing. So, you know, we've already tested them all, so now we can just sit here and do the positives, and we just want to hit that just like that all the way across, all of them up and down, until we get 8 panels basically. So it's quite simple. It's just pretty tedious because I forget how many, what is that, I want to say that's 512 or 524, I can't remember, something like that, LEDs. But then you've got 2 leads on the lead, so that's like what, 1,000 something. I think it's 512 LEDs, so it's 1,024 leads. And I will say this, on this SainSmart, or SainSmart, whatever it's called, when I got this was a tricolor, meaning it had green LEDs, red LEDs, and blue LEDs, and they were the rectangular LEDs. I didn't, first of all, I didn't want a tricolor, and I don't really like those rectangular ones, so I changed it to all red 5mm round. So that's up to you. You can leave it, you know, the tricolor if you want. I just didn't want it tricolor. And yeah, so now I'm just gonna sit here and finish up. This is my last panel actually, so I'm gonna sit there and finish soldering these up, and then we can go ahead and finish off the circuit board. Like I said, there's only a couple things on there that needs to be soldered, and then we can put the pins in. That's going to take a minute, but I'll show you how I do that. But also, before we can solder the panels together, these, you know, on this one side here, there's all the negatives. As you can see, all the negatives are sticking out. They have to be bent around as well, because this is going to be soldered to that, and to solder the next one, and to the next one, and the next one, etc., etc. So, I'm going to show you a little technique I'm doing on these, on this grid here. This is for the 8x8x8 5mm matrix, and I'm taking a little punch out for leather. It's got a really fine tip. I'm just going ahead and taking it and marking out these spots right on the crosshairs, because, you know, it's corrugated, so there's some soft and harder parts to it, and it, you know, even though it's a steel drill, it'll wander to the soft spot just like it will in wood. So just give it a little poke right on the center of those all those crosses. Make it just a little bit easier. one more thing. I'm actually, this piece of cardboard is relatively thin, and since these 5mm LEDs are a little bit longer, I'm actually going to glue this to another piece of cardboard so it's a little bit deeper, so they'll sit in a little bit deeper without bottoming out, because like I said, since they're longer, they're going to bottom out. At least on this. You might have some thicker cardboard than me, because this is relatively thin.